You know this is supposed to be a review. I can guarantee it's not going to end up one. Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and today we're talking about a book that is long overdue to be talked about on my channel, and that is Trials of Apollo, Book 5, Tower of Nero. So, I promised myself I would read this book this year, and I did. Last year, 2020. By the time you're seeing this, it will be the first. So, congratulations, new year, you survived. I got this done. I read the entirety of Trials of Apollo in the year 2020. Frankly, that's terrifying, but it has been done, and I am in love. And what I said beginning this video, this won't be a review, this is a gush. I have nothing critical to say about this book. I love it so much. Let's start off with the basics. Trials of Apollo is a series that follows the god Apollo as he is cast down from Olympus and forced into a mortal body as sort of a punishment for something he's blamed for at the end of Heroes of Olympus. You don't need to read Heroes of Olympus to read Trials of Apollo, but it's recommended, and also any book of Rick Riordan you should read, because frankly they're all amazing and all lovely, and I have an entire shelf just dedicated to them. This book does kind of touch on stuff that happens in every other series of this, so it kind of is that nice tie-up to every single series, because this is the last in the Camp Half-Blood saga. This is it. We're not going to see Percy Jackson anymore, we're not going to see Magnus Chase anymore, we're not going to see the Kane Chronicles anymore, we're not even seeing Camp Jupiter anymore. This is it. Rick Riordan has said he's done with this series. He's probably going to look into more other mythologies to touch on. He's mentioned that he's going to go looking into Irish mythology next, but it's not going to be tied into Camp Half-Blood Saga. So this is the last of it, and that's probably why I'm so biased in my review, because Percy Jackson has been a major point in my life these past few years. I only started reading Percy Jackson in high school, like the last year of high school. I have an entire video planned on my Rick Riordan journey, but please note, incredibly biased. But even if I wasn't biased, I still don't think I could find fault in this book, because it is just that amazing. As you probably noticed, I annotated my copy. That was not the original intent. I was not having my sticky notes next to me when I started reading this book, but I kept noticing things I wanted to annotate, wanted to tab, wanted to come back to later. So obviously this book is amazing and wonderful in many pages, and I tried to limit myself on I can't tab every single page, but I got pretty darn close. Now, like I mentioned before, this does have tie-ins to other Rick Riordan books, but again, you don't have to read them, to understand them, there's little tidbits. This really does complete a bunch of the things, while leaving enough doors open that's it's something for the fans, it's something for the author to come back to. We always know that these stories are going to be continuing because the characters' lives do live on after this. And just the way the story ended, I'm gonna be I can't talk about it at all, because spoilers, and book 5 and book 15, actually. So this book is amazing, and I love it so much, and that should be obvious. So, it tied up really well. The ending was perfect and wonderful. This story was the best ending this series could have, and I wouldn't have it any other way, because there's nothing in this book I would change. There's nothing I think needs to be touched more on. Even though I had my faults with book 1 and 2 of Trials of Apollo series, the way that the character arcs ended up was stunning. I had to have the 2 first books, even though I didn't like them too much. They were still 4 stars, but compared to everything else that was 5 stars, a little disappointing. And then I reread book 1 in preparation for book 5, and everything made sense. The way that the characters grow and develop, it's just wonderful and perfect, and I'm yes, they needed to have that rough beginning to have this perfect ending. And ain't that the entire story of Percy Jackson? Now, even though this comes from an entire universe of stories, there are still new characters that are introduced to this. Not too many, but enough you get a good ground for them, and I loved all of them. I really did. Every single character that was introduced to it, I'm adopting you, you're mine now. It was so great and so amazing. There are characters who you're introduced to that other characters knew, but we didn't know. It was great. And then there's new characters for basically everyone, and that one was amazing. I gotta say, the representation in this book, and really all of Rick Riordan's book, but this one specifically was amazing and beautiful. Mental health, different people of color, and just the way that things were done were so amazing. There's a background character in this that we were introduced to. He doesn't really do anything, but it is a half-blood, a demigod fighting in a wheelchair, and I'm yes, thank you, this is everything I want. And Chiron, interacting with the kids that we meet at Camp Half-Blood, and at the situation where our main characters are dealing with, I can't, again, nothing critical to say. I love everything about this book. And kind of on that note, there are characters that we are finally meeting in this book. Like, they've been talked about beforehand, but we've never actually seen them interact on page. We finally get to see them in this book. Again, it's perfect and lovely. And like, that was the first thing I annotated, chapter 4. If you guys have read this, chapter 4 is just, it is, again, amazing. If you were to give me a list of everything that makes up a book, a setting, a character, an antagonist, it is all done perfectly in this book. And a lot of that does depend on the buildup that we've experienced in the past 15 or so books, and it utilizes it so well. And like I mentioned before, it doesn't tie off all the loose ends. There's still doors open. Stuff can still be discussed going into the future, but that's just because the characters are going to continue living. This isn't, and they all lived happily ever after. They're half-bloods, not going to live happily ever after, but they're going to have a happy life. There's going to be trials and tribulations, of course there are, but it's just, everything that we care about is done. And I'm trying to talk without spoilers here, but I love it so much. And I do want to warn you, Percy and Annabeth and that whole gang of characters, they're not really that relevant in this book. They're talked about. You kind of see them, but this is not their story. This is Apollo's story. And I think that's done so well in this book. It really does set it up. And I'm just, it's so good. And for any of you Nico and Will fans, I gotta say, those two characters play such an important role in this book. You really get to see how these two characters have developed throughout the series, and they're so important in this, even though, like I mentioned before, it's Apollo's book. They're so important. They're the new gang of characters that we follow in this, and it's so well done. And it's kind of set up that, yeah, Nico and Will, they're still living at camp. They still have to go off and do the half-blood things. They still have quests and adventures to do. But this story is done, and I'm not ready to let it go yet. I was putting off reading this book because of how much I love this universe. And I'm really excited for it because when I have to reread everything again, because you know I'm going to, this will be the last book I end on, and that is the perfect ending to everything. I don't think I've read a better conclusion for a series, like, ever. Like I mentioned before, this is not a review, this is a gush. I have nothing critical to say about this. Before we finish this off, I have one person I need to thank, and that is Casey. Casey is a member of a Discord community I'm a part of. I made an offhand comment that the audiobook I was waiting for from my library has a 6-month hold on it. Like, I'm not going to be able to get it until well into next year. And they saw that, and they lent me their audiobook, and it was so kind of them, and it was so beautiful and amazing, and I was finally able to read this because, if you guys don't know, I'm very dyslexic. Physically reading books is not the easiest thing for me, and for something I love so much, I didn't want to be hindered by that. So I was prepared to wait, and then Casey just made everything so perfect and beautiful. So thank you so much. I read this book. It is just, if you can't tell, I'm truly in love with it. But that is really all I have to say. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I tried to do my best with not going into spoilers, but you know, book 15, a little bit difficult. If you liked what I talked about and liked this book as well, please comment that down in the comment section down below. While you're down there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.